regarding the discovery of classified and official documents at the President's residence and former office. Last week, you told, I believe it was Phil, that we all can assume, the American people could assume that the searches were complete and all the documents had been recovered. On Saturday, the White House counsel's office said that 5 additional classified documents had been found. Is it safe to assume now that all the documents have been recovered, all the official records, all the classified documents are back in the custody of the National Archives, or are more searches underway to find out if there's anything else there?
Look, I understand your question. We have addressed multiple questions from here. Multiple questions have been answered by the President. I know that you all just spent about, some of your colleagues, maybe you yourself, Zeke, was on the phone with my colleague for about 45 minutes that addressed a lot of your questions. I'm just going to continue to be prudent here. I'm going to let this ongoing review that is happening, this legal process that is happening, and let that process continue under the special counsel. I'm not going to comment from here. I'm not, one of the things that we have said for the last 2 years when it comes to the Department of Justice, when it comes to legal matters, when it comes to legal issues, we have been very clear that we are not going to comment, we are not going to politically interfere, and that continues with this legal issue. And so I would refer you to the Department of Justice, refer you to the special counsel as it relates to specifics on this issue, and also my White House counsel colleagues are engaging with all of you and will certainly continue to have conversations on this. I will say that we are consistent with what we have said on cooperating fully with the Department of Justice on this issue, and we will continue to cooperate fully with the special.
Follow up, if I can, very quickly on this. The White House says Republicans are faking outrage on this issue. Why shouldn't Americans be outraged about classified documents being found in a garage?
Look, and I think I've been very clear about this. We have answered questions on this at this podium. You've heard, as Phil was saying, twice from the President talk about this. He said that he didn't know, right? He said that he was surprised, and he said that he takes classified information and documents very, very seriously. We heard directly from the President on this issue. Now, anything else, anything beyond that, we're just not going to talk about. There's an investigation going on. There's a legal process here, as we've been very, very clear about. I will let the White House counsel talk about any specific details about that, but we're going to be prudent here and make sure that we are not interfering in this process.
I guess that's why I'm asking, though, because you've said that you don't want to interfere here and be prudent about the process, but the White House did post a statement saying that Republicans are faking outrage. So to that point, why shouldn't Americans be upset about documents found in a garage?
That's for the American people to decide, right? That is for you all, or I'm sure going to talk to many folks out there and have this conversation. But what we do know, right, what we do know from polling that we have seen over and over again, from your coverage, from what we hear, what the President goes out and talks to the American people, they also care about the economy. Right? They also care about what is the President doing to lower costs, which is why he took historic action in making sure that gas prices went down at the gas pump. And we saw that happen by more than $1.70. And that's the work that the President's going to focus on. You think about the Inflation Reduction Act. That's going to lower prescription drug costs, lower medical costs, right? When you think about that, lower energy costs. So that's going to be our focus here. We know that's what the American people truly care about as well, and it is very important for them that we do that work. I'm going to try and go to the back. Go ahead.
Thanks, Karine. On Friday, you stood here, though, and were asked about this documents issued by our count some 18 times. At that point, the President's lawyers had found these 5 additional pages of classified documents. So did you not know on Friday that those documents had been found when you were at the podium, or are you being directed by someone to not be forthcoming on this issue?
I have been forthcoming from this podium. What I said yes to was what the statement at the time that we all had, right? You all had the statement. And I was repeating what the council was sharing at that time.
Right, we had that statement, so we knew what was in it. But you also knew. Did you not know that?
I'm telling you, I just answered the question. I just said that I was repeating what the information that we had at that time, right? That you all had. I was confirming from what the special counsel had provided to all of you, and that we knew as well from here. So just to be very, very clear. And look. I've also been very clear about being prudent from here. I was also being very clear about being consistent from here. and not going beyond what is currently happening, right? And again, this is an ongoing, I also said this was an ongoing review that was happening with the Department of Justice, and as we know with the special counsel, I've been very consistent about that as well. And that's one of the reasons, your question to me is one of the reasons why we are being very, very careful and very mindful, and to not interfere here, and to make sure that the Department of Justice has their independence. Your question actually proves that, and that's why we're going to continue to refer you to Department of Justice and refer you to the special counsel or my colleagues
Is the president
at White House Counsel.
Does President Biden have confidence in the way his team is handling this, with this trickle out of information and the documents being found day after day?
I can tell you this, the president has confidence. I can tell you this, that the president and his team rightfully took action when they learned that the documents existed. They reached out to the archives. They reached out to the Department of Justice. That is the steps. We have been very clear about that, the steps and the process that we took here. And look, we're going to continue. We're going to continue to, as we have said, fully cooperate with the Department of Justice. We're going to fully cooperate with the president's team is going to fully cooperate with the special counsel. That does not stop, and that will just continue. Again, we are going to respect the independence of the Department of Justice.
Could you describe his mood to us and the conversations you've had with him on this issue?
His mood has been very clear. I saw him this morning. He's very focused. I traveled with him this weekend. He wants to make sure that he's continuing, and we are continuing to deliver for the American people. And we've been pretty consistent on that. If you think about last week, you heard from him about how his economic plan is working, how we have seen inflation go down for 6 months straight, how we have seen unemployment numbers at its lowest level in 50 years. That matters. That is also the things that this country, the people in this country, are also very, very concerned about and want to hear what this president is doing every day. That's his focus, and that's what he's going to continue to talk about. Go ahead, Steve.
Given these documents have shown up in very personal spaces, we all know that the president loves his Delaware home. It's an extremely personal space for him. Is he physically joining in the search of these things, rummaging around, these boxes in the garage and wherever else? I mean, literally.
Are you listening to the question that you're asking me?
Serious,
look,
serious
I mean,
where are these documents? It's serious
okay,
matter. Is
look,
he taking
look,
part in searching for his own documents?
Look, I'm going to be very consistent here. I am going to be very clear here, as I have been for the past couple of days, almost a week now, dealing with this. We are going to, any specific questions that you have about this issue, I would refer you to my colleagues at the White House Counsel's Office, who spent almost an hour taking these questions from all of you, many of your colleagues. I'm going to let you ask that question to the White House Counsel's Office. And anything else specific to this, I refer you to Department of Justice. I refer you to Special Counsel.
Follow up on Cecilia's question, and sorry if I missed it, but on Friday, did you or did you not know about the additional 5 pages?
I literally just answered that question.
But I missed it, so is it yes or no?
Well, I mean, you're not too far sitting next to her, so I was very clear. I provided the information that you all had at the time, and I confirmed. No, I did not know. I'm saying I had the information. I actually said this to Cecilia. I had the information that you all had at the time. Right? And so this is why I also said to Cecilia, this is why we are trying to be very prudent here, and we're trying to be very consistent and say this is an ongoing legal process, and this is why I say we're just not going to comment from here. That is a perfect example in Cecilia's question, and I was very clear about that.
When did you learn about the documents found at the Penn Center in November and in Wilmington in December?
When your team was doing a story on it. Because I was also asked a similar question about if our team has been engaged on this, and I've been very clear. This is something that the White House counsel is handling. This is something that is being handled by the president's lawyers, and been very clear. That's why this is why we are being prudent here. This is why we're being consistent with what we have done the last 2 years when it comes to DOJ, Department of Justice investigation. We are just not going to interfere.
Well, on that note, you've repeatedly emphasized the need, just as you did today, for independence, for integrity of the Department of Justice investigation. one reason why you continue to point us to the DOJ. So I wonder why then did the White House counsel go to Wilmington to facilitate the handing over of documents to the DOJ?
That is
How
a-
is that separate?
that
How is
is-
that separating the White House from the DOJ?
And Weijia, I appreciate the questions. I know there's going to continue to be dozens more questions probably today, and I will say, reach out to the White House counsel's office. That's one of the reasons my colleague was on the phone with many of you taking questions today, and I'm just going to leave it there. That is something for them to answer.
Okay, but it's related to something that you keep telling us, which is how much it is important to this White House to separate the White House from the DOJ's investigation. But the White House counsel was the one to go and facilitate the documents, to look for the documents.
Again, they have been working very closely with the Department of Justice. I would refer you to them. If you want to know specifically about their actions, specifically about what they're doing, I would point you to the White House counsel's office. Look, guys, you guys can ask me this 100 times, 200 times if you wish. I'm going to keep saying the same thing. I hear your question. It's been asked, it's been answered, it's been noted, and we're just going to try to move on here, and we're going to move on. We're going to move on. We're going to move on.
One
false
more.
information.
We're gonna move
One
on.
more, because Ian did have that call today, and he said that the White House would, quote, fully cooperate with the investigation. Does that mean that President Biden is willing to be interviewed if called?
I'm just not gonna, you're asking a question that should go to the White House counsel's office, as you just said. Ian, you spoke to my colleague just moments ago. That is something that the White House counsel's office should be answering. Anything specific to the DOJ or special counsels, what they're doing, you need to reach out to them. Go ahead, Tam.
I just want to ask you about something you said last week. Last week you were pretty insistent that you believed that the president's attorneys did the right thing. Do you still believe that?
Yes, they did the right thing when it comes to making sure that when the documents were found, they handed it over to the archivist, and it was handed over to Department of Justice. But again, Steve, I'm going to be very prudent here. I am going to be very consistent. It is an ongoing legal process. I'm not going to say more.
But the reason I ask is that what we now know, the president's counsel statement, the president's personal lawyer statement, shed a bit more light on this, but they raise more questions. Namely, the first call that the president's personal attorneys made on November 2nd was not to the FBI that they had found what we now know were top secret documents out in the open. The first call was to officials here at this White House in the West Wing. How is that the right thing? Isn't that the right thing when you see something, if you're a lawyer and you don't have a security clearance and you see a classified document, shouldn't you call the Justice Department's National Security Office right away?
Again, I'm going to refer you to the White House counsel's office. That is something for them to answer. That is a very specific question that they should answer, that they will engage with on you on this, just like my colleague did for almost an hour and had this conversation with all of you.
It was about a half hour, but let me widen out. Why is it the matter of this White House counsel to deal with documents from 2 administrations ago? We're not talking about presidential records from this White House. Why is this White House counsel involved in this matter at all?
Again, this is something for the White House counsel to address. I am not going to address that from here. I will refer you to them, and I will refer you to the special counsel and anything that is specific to this particular issue. We're being pulled. Folks have to gather. Okay, folks have